body. Allow me now to introduce to all of you Mr. Amjad Hossein Panahi to start his speech about the Kurdish prisoners of conscience sentenced to death. And before that, I would like to say to all of you, Mr. Hossein Panahi, he's a human rights activist, and the major part of his activism is actually on the subject of the rights of political and conscious prisoners and against death penalty in Iran. Greetings to all of you, and thank you to the organizers of this event. According to the human rights principles, death penalty is something that is done with the knowledge of everyone, and the government of Iran uses that to put pressure on the society and tries to put pressure on the citizens of Iran. In this regime, not only many of the political prisoners are under the danger of being killed, but also many people who actually not are also in danger of being killed. We have executions in the street, in the public. We have extrajudicial one, and now we have time. Now it is time that we completely abolish the death penalty in the world, and our experience in the world shows that many people who actually see these executions, they lose compassion. And nowhere we can say that this has actually affected security and has made the country more secure. In many countries, especially in the third world, we have people from the minorities and people who are poor who suffer the highest number of executions. And unfortunately, when you have death penalty, you can't even correct a mistake in a legal system. You can't, if someone is actually sentenced to death and there's been a mistake in his case, there's no way to actually correct that mistake. Unfortunately, many countries in the world, they think that they can actually correct or fix the social, political, and financial situation in a country through death penalty and executing their prisoners. Many people in the world, they don't know that the death penalty, actually what it does, it increases violence in a society. Abolishing death penalty is becoming something very popular in today's discourse, but unfortunately not to the speed that we are hoping to have it done. And we all have to know that death penalty, how it is done and how it affects the main and basic rights of a human being. When we kill someone in a very cold way, it's a way of killing someone in a very cold way according to the law of the country, and it is something that is done by the government of the country where that person lives. And we have to ask ourselves, are the governments really have the right to do that? When, unfortunately, the government uses their power in order to exercise violence and execution in society and raise the amount of violence in that society. In any place where there is death penalty, those who are suffering from it, they are the first victims, and we have also the families of those people who are also victims of that. Death penalty is considered to be as something that strengthens the pillars of dictatorships in the world. I would like to mention to you some of the statistics of those people who were executed from 2014 to the date. You know that in the past year, we have had a high number of prisoners who were executed in Iran, and the international community has actually protested against this. And many people thought that with the government of Mr. Rouhani something will change and that there will be the number of executions and death penalty cases will go actually down, because they thought that Mr. Rouhani would be actually a mild president. But unfortunately we see clearly that how this number has risen and how we've had secret executions. According to official and non-official sources, we had 250 people executed from the beginning of this year, and this great difference between this year and other year, it has to do with two principles or two causes. If we compare the first 5 months of 2014, every day we've had 2 executions in Iran, and if we compare that, we can say that in the past 35 years in Iran, we've never had a case such as this one. According to the human rights organizations in Iran, 314 people were killed in Iran, and from the 1st of January until the 1st of June, we have had 180 people who were executed. And these 180 people were actually not acknowledged by the officials in Iran. The officials in the government of Iran, they say that we can only say that the first 3 weeks of March, because we have our new year in Iran, because of the festivities of the new year, for those 3 first weeks of March, we've had no executions in Iran. But if we're not to count these 3 weeks, we can say that the average was 2 executions per day. 687 were executed in 2013. This is the highest number of executions in Iran, and it's the highest one for the past 15 years in Iran. It seems like in the past 2 years, this number of executions is going higher and higher. Since I've specialized in this and I've done a lot of research on this, allow me now to talk about, in my report, to these issues. We have the executions of the political prisoners and prisoners of conscience in Iran. And from the time that Mr. Rouhani was elected as the president of the country, we've had 27 political prisoners who were executed in Iran. They were activists, Baluch and Kurd activists who were executed in the prisons of Iran without actually notifying their families or even notifying the persons themselves. Mr. Khosravi is one of the persons who were actually sentenced to death, and he was accused because he's helped financially the Mujahideen. He was executed in the prison of Rajai Shah. In this time, 6 activists, Baluch, and other activists, Kurd activists, were also executed in a secretive way without notifying them. 2 of the Kurdish activists who I've just mentioned, they were, without the notification to the lawyer and to their family, they were also executed. Shirku Marefi, he's a political prisoner, Kurd. His court ruling was given to him at the time of Ahmadinejad, and there was many of the people in the international community have protested against that ruling. When it goes back to the high court in the high tribunal in Iran, this sentence is actually confirmed last year without notifying his family and his lawyers, or without even following the correct procedures. They just called the prison and they say that Mr. Shirku should be executed at 6 o'clock in the morning. Outside of all of this, we have these 6 Arab activists. One of them is a teacher Hadi Rashidi. He's 37 and he is a chemistry teacher. He was executed last year. He was actually taken out of the prison where he was finishing his sentence in, and a few days after he was executed, they notify his family, and they don't even tell his family where he was buried. Abdul Reza Jasem Muqaddami, they were taken from the prison in Karun in Ahvaz. They were taken to another prison and they were executed there, and then they notified their family. In the morning of the month of August, a notification was given to kill or to execute these 6 Baluch activists who were finishing their sentence in prison. According to the human rights activists who were in Baluchistan, they say that these 16 people who were activists, didn't have a court ruling really about their case. They didn't even, the procedures were actually not correct and it was not confirmed at all. But unfortunately, in 1 hour, they killed these 16 young Baluch in the prison. And according to the researches that I've done, about a month ago, 53 Kurd activists that we have, many of them are political activists, and some of them are actually active in the Kurd political parties. Many of them were accused because they are Sunni, and they say that they've collaborated with Kurdish political parties. They were all sentenced to death penalty. And according to the families of these prisoners, I've talked to many of the family members of these prisoners, and many of them I've spoken to them, and the research that I've done, it shows that these 53 people, they were actually given their court ruling in 3-4 minutes. The court hearing was actually 3-4 minutes long, and the court itself, they just put any lawyer, and many of these friends, in the shortest period of time, really, this court ruling was issued, and without following any of the legal procedures that should be followed and respected in any case. And that's now, as I'm talking to you, we have 8 Kurdish activists, because of their participation in Pojak and other political parties. They are also sentenced to death, and their court ruling has been sent now to the High Tribunal. One of them is a prisoner that is in Sakis, and he was arrested after 3 years that this person was tortured, and in different prisons in Sanandij. He is sent to Sanandij after having his court procedures done in 3-4 minutes. He was sentenced for death penalty. Ali and Habib Afshari, they are now they were arrested, and they were actually shot by 2 of the soldiers of Sepah Pastaran, and he is under severe physical conditions. Their court hearing was also confirmed, and the High Tribunal was actually issued their court hearing, and basically any time this sentence can be done. According to the reports that we've received about these 53 activists that I've just talked to you about, according to the officials' reports or the reports that we have received from different organizations, basically the judge didn't even give any time to the defense lawyer to speak or to say anything or to address the court. The only thing that the judge said I will pass on a sentence of death penalty. We will execute you, so it will be a lesson for everyone that wants to follow your footsteps. This is what was said by the judge in the court. Unfortunately, I don't have time to talk about all the different cases. I just want to say that according to the reports of the human rights activists in Iran and in different other places that we have been able to get this information, we have more than 80 political prisoners that have been sentenced to death. And unfortunately, many of the human rights activists and human rights organizations have tried to do something about the cases of these friends, but nothing has been done so far. Thank you so much.